Some friends for you, 'cause you couldn't stand it, me all independent, so you had to have me for yourself. That was when I trusted you, when I could add up 2 and 2, when you promised we'd be together, you, me, forever. Now there's nothing left to lose, and though I understand it's hard sometimes to make up your mind in these trying times, yeah, I just can't accept you leaving me when I'm overseas with the heart so heavy. Think that I deserve the truth for once, not a guilty tone, 'cause you're not alone, yeah. You said you wanna come home, but I know you don't. So this time I won't hear it on the phone. If you got something to say to me, then say it to my face, what it's all about, why you're bailing out. Think you owe me an apology, just say it to my face, you're sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. Say it to my face, you're sorry.
Join our membership program, sign up, find out what's going on, become a patron, and support our work. We're doing these amazing virtual live streams covering events, marches, protests, and actions that mainstream media just isn't covering.
A lot of these very common sense policy interventions aren't given the space they need.
You know, the truth is, before we have the political revolution, we need a media revolution.
We really see this opening in the media space with television transitioning to the internet in particular. Streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, etc., are the next frontier.
And we're not mainstream media. You're not getting a 10-second clip and a very watered down, whitewashed version of what's going on.
Having a media company to support these kind of movement efforts is extremely valuable.
People want to talk to us because they know that we're talking to the people.
We need a dedicated, empowered, honorable base of people who are willing to fight for what they believe in.
This needs to be all of us, not just like watching great content, not just sharing great content, but taking the correlated action and making sure that together these movements are more effective across the board.
We are amplifying activist messages, activist movements, activist campaigns, activist call to action. There's no more important work to be done in this country right now, and ACT TV is doing it, and we need you to be a member. Go to ACT.tv and sign up to be a member today.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Good morning and welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. It is Wednesday. It is May 25th, 2022. I am calling in remotely, and I had to call in this morning before we begin the regular show so that we could speak about what happened, what transpired yesterday. 19 children, the latest report, 19 children and 2 adults have been killed in Texas as a result of another mass shooting. Mass shootings have become so commonplace in this country that we can cover this on autopilot, but we dare not do that out of respect for the families. But it happens so frequently that about 2 years ago, I realized that I've covered so many mass shootings that I'm repeating the same thing over and over again. And if I had to be completely transparent, one of the biggest challenges for me in this industry, particular me personally, and this industry specifically, is having to constantly talk about children being massacred and then seeing politicians play games with the lives of our children. And I would like for them to understand what that's like. I do believe fervently that if politicians had the same fear as children in 5th grade, then we would get changes. But politicians have no fear in this country because they're able to pass laws within 24 hours. When a handful of white women showed up at the Supreme Court justice's home in protest of the forthcoming Roe versus Wade decision, they dressed up like Handmaid's Tale, like the show. It was a very demonstrative and creative protest. That was seen as such a threat to the life and well-being of the Supreme Court justices that within 24 hours of that event, all of Washington, D.C., the House, the Senate, worked to pass legislation to protect the Supreme Court justices. We have had more children die at schools than police officers in the line of duty. We have had, it is more dangerous for children to go to school than it is for them to be active military. And yet we're dealing with a nation where we're going to do this again next week. Because last week we have yet to bury the 10 black people who were gunned down in the white supremacist, racist hate crime last week in Buffalo. Those bodies are not even buried yet. And yet now we have to mourn and grieve the lives of so many children between 2nd and 5th grade. And now we have to endure Republicans doing the usual. They're going to shift this because this young man was brown and had a brown-sounding name, the shooter. We're going to now engage with Republicans talking about immigration when this boy was born in the United States of America. The shooter was born in North Dakota. He got his gun from a manufacturer called Daniel Defense. Daniel Defense. They are nicely situated on I-16 between Atlanta, Georgia, and Savannah, Georgia. I know where their offices are, and I do plan on making a trip with a camera crew. Go to patreon.com/The BPD Show to support that because we don't have time to talk about this anymore. It's time to pull up. Shout out to Act TV. With this is not possible. Go to Act TV/join because I'm going to take some camera crews with me from Act TV if we can get this arranged. Because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, just like I know everybody in the audience is sick and tired of being sick and tired. There can be something that is done, but we have to eradicate, rhetorically and politically speaking, these monsters who have no compunction about stepping on the lives of slain children. I remember Sandy Hook very clearly. I was a teacher at the time in Jacksonville, Florida. It was the Friday before Christmas break. And we were outside playing basketball. I brought the students back in and got an alert on my phone that a mass shooting had just occurred. I believe if my numbers, if my memory serves me right, it was about 14 children who were killed right before Christmas break. And you know what these bastards said? Do you know what these soulless golems said? Joe the Plumber, Republican hero at the time, said, "Your dead children do not give you the right to infringe on my Second Amendment rights." These are the same soulless bastards who send their children out into the pandemic without masks and without a vaccine. So if you think for 1 second these people have a place in their heart that can be reached, think again. They are unreasonable, and we are far past the time of being reasonable with unreasonable people. They are murderous, and we don't have time to negotiate with terrorists. The only thing we have time left to do is chase every one of these devils out of office. From lobbyists, Joe Biden, if you don't step up, we need to chase you out of office too. Whoever uses their power in this moment to genuflect, deflect, or delay is an enemy of our children. Every one of these politicians running around talking about grooming and pedophilia, we know they protest too much. Al does protest too much. We know where the groomers are. The Southern Baptist Convention just released a study of over 300 instances of sexual abuse in their church, across their churches. We know where this is coming from. And it is time out for us to be trying to be reasonable with unreasonable people, to be logical with illogical people, or to be civil with people who would just as soon be like Paul Gosar and take a rumor from 4chan. And instead of this elected representative who is in Washington, D.C., getting paid about $200,000 a year off of your taxpayer dollars, instead of him using his fully funded staff to do some actual research, he took a rumor from 4chan and tried to blame the shooting yesterday on a trans leftist. Because in the midst of all of this suffering and sorrow, don't forget Republicans still want to make you afraid and hate the trans community. So I would like to just say this, everyone forget, but absolutely F, I'm going to hold it together, F trying to triangulate into bipartisanship with monsters. The very first line of defense is to get every single one of them out of power. Yes, that means you have to vote and nobody wants to vote. Because what have the Democrats done for us? But I tell you what we're going to have to do for ourselves, protect ourselves from all of them. Republicans and Democrats who won't protect our children. Republicans and Democrats who won't protect the right to choose. Republicans and Democrats who won't protect the right to vote for the love of God. And especially Republicans and Democrats who won't protect black people from being killed and gunned down by these racist incels and virgins. These people, for the lack of having sex, they're going out of their minds because they believe that they are entitled to women's bodies. And so instead of seeking mental health counseling, they go to elementary schools and gun down innocents so that they can exact so much pain on us. It is time that we exact that type of political pain on every single elected official, every lobbyist, every organization, every association that is allowing our children to be gunned down like lambs to the slaughter. We have to let them know that there are lions amongst these lambs, and we're going to come after them because they're coming after our children. David, I'm going to use the rest of the time to the show as it is prepared. I am going to do my best to get out in front of Daniel Defense. Daniel Defense is the manufacturing company that produced the AR-15 that was used yesterday. And if you guys can support us, patreon.com/the BPD show or @TV/join, wherever you want to send your support, we are going to go and be in their faces because enough is enough, and I ain't got nothing else to say. It's time to pull up. David and Dwayne, it's in y'all hands. The rest of the team will be here throughout the day. I am still going to be remote for some time. Thank you to everybody on the team who is holding down the fort while I am away, but we are still working, and I'll see you guys next time.
Just to the whole audience, we wanted to make sure that we came on live, and Ben wanted to just we didn't want to gloss over the event. The only thing I'll say before we start today's recording is that the rest of the show is mostly focused on George Floyd on this anniversary, but we're definitely keeping an eye on Uvalde, and we're very, very much kind of trying to digest it just as much as everyone else is. James should be back on air tomorrow. Go for it, Dwayne.
2021. It marks 1 year since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of former police officer Derek Chauvin, who is now convicted and awaiting sentencing. Today, so many media outlets are discussing and covering the murder and the subsequent protests that took place around the country. And I do want to echo one thing that has been said over and over again. But then I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about this from a different perspective. The first thing I want to say is that George Floyd did change the world. I want to play this audio from his daughter, Gianna Floyd. And she said this, it's a very short clip, but she said this just days after her father was killed. And I do want to affirm to that little sister that your daddy did change the world.
Right, daddy changed the world.
He did what?
Daddy changed the world. Daddy changed the world.
It's that clip. I saw that clip last year when she said it the same day, and it still breaks me to hear that young girl have to. It gives me joy, and it simultaneously breaks my heart. It gives me joy because she was able to find a moment of joy in one of her darkest hours. It breaks my heart that she had to endure that. I also want to say, before I go into the broader conversation, that it's not just your daddy who changed the world, Gianna. You're going to change the world. Our children are going to change the world. Every generation gets stronger. We've had setbacks. There were setbacks in the late 60s when the powerful gunned down our revolutionaries, our leaders. But we're back. This country is facing a movement that is decentralized and democratized. And there's no one leader. They gunned down our leaders in the 60s. But now every single one of us, you, me, your family members, your friends, everyone who understands the value of a human life, we are leading this new revolution. And our children often think, what kind of monsters am I creating in my household? How many nights have my children sat and listened to me speak truth to power? And then I hear it coming out of them. I hear them speaking it. I hear them seeing it. They see it for themselves. They see the poverty. They see the despair. And the first thing they ask is, why? And then the second thing they ask is, how do we change it? So, Gianna, you're going to change the world in ways that would make your father as proud of you as you are of your father. I'm hopeful. This year later, things have not changed. Not in a significant fashion. Black men and women are still being killed by police. We still collectively suffer underneath a police state that is so magnificently disguised. And it's disguised because of, well, if the people understood exactly the nature of what we are suffering under, then absolutely we would rebel. But we've been convinced that the police state is here to protect and serve us, when they are literally here to control us. Little has changed since George Floyd was murdered before our eyes, except for one thing. See, what happened was that they snatched his life away from us in the most barbaric way imaginable. The carelessness and the callousness that Derek Chauvin pressed his body weight onto the body of George Floyd as George pleaded for his life and called for his mother. It showed very clearly, in the most traumatic way imaginable, just how much this police state does not value human life in general, Black lives specifically. And it was because of that display of barbarity that so many people took to the streets. People of all races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, religions, gender identifications. The people stood up because they saw exactly how little black lives matter to this police state, and they said enough was enough.
No peace, no KKK, no racist USA. No Trump, no KKK, no racist USA.
Not just here in the United States, but all around the world. It was a global protest saying in a unified voice that Black lives matter. And while some people dismiss the protest as symbolic and just nothing but performative, there's something that cannot be denied about that moment. Something that we need to capture from that moment and replicate far beyond what happened a year ago today. It is the humanity. The humanity that people saw in George Floyd that was being stolen away by a barbaric system that has no regard for human life if that life gets in the way of someone's personal greed, someone's personal political agenda, or a police officer's need to exert their dominance over the people. The barbarity of Derek Chauvin and the other 3 officers was enough to set this country ablaze.
You can't even look at me like a man because you a bum, bro. He's not even resisting arrest right now, bro.
Pass out.
He's not responsive right now, bro. You're definitely a bum, bro.
Tell me what it is. Tell me what his pulse is right now.
Check the pulse.
The fact that you guys are checking his pulse and doing compressions if he needs them, you guys are on him.
There are so many emotions as I'm sitting here listening to you. I'm having my own. I'm surprised at my own emotions on TV with you, but I've just, as a white woman, aware of my own privilege in this country, I am so angry. And I can't even begin. Forgive me.
I'm raising a son. I have no idea what to tell him. It's hard being Black in this country when your life is not valued.
It's hard being Black in this country when your life is not valued. That was Bakari Sellers. The voice before that was Brooke Baldwin of CNN. And the voices before that were witnesses, people who were there, who saw the inhumanity, who saw the barbarity. As Derek Chauvin took George Floyd's life, and the reaction around the country was to let this system know that enough was enough. That's what I really am thinking about right now. I'm thinking about the fact that something was released in this country through the violence that took George Floyd's life that is uncontainable, that this system cannot control. They cannot put the genie back in the bottle. They messed up and showed us exactly how barbaric they were. And the response of the people was that this cannot happen. Now, does this mean that the system has changed? No, it doesn't mean that. We're still in the middle of the fights. We have not gotten victory. It's not over. It is far from over. But we're looking at each other differently right now. We have been born into systems that told us to be selfish, to be individualistic, to look out for ourselves. But when we saw how this system treated our brother, we said no. We are our brother's keeper. We are our sister's keeper. We said that we will respond by seeing the humanity in every individual, especially those who are being oppressed and brutalized by this system. Derek Chauvin's inhumanity and his barbarity woke up our humanity. And I hope, it is my earnest prayer, that we can maintain that gaze towards our common humanity, the value of every life. Human life is too precious. It is too precious to be crushed underneath the boots of this police state. Human life is too precious to be crushed underneath this military industrial complex. This human life, it is too precious to be crushed by the greed of these systems and the greed of the powerful in these systems. Our lives are too valuable. I am so sorry, Gianna Floyd, that it cost you your father's life for all of us to see the value of our lives, to see the value of humanity. I am so sorry that it took a barbaric act by a savage and by a system that is savage in a country that is barbaric on this planet where we have disregarded the value of human life since day one. We think nothing of killing other people, not as a common humanity. We think nothing of dropping bombs indiscriminately for profit. We think nothing about the homeless. We think nothing about the sick and the dying. This system would just as soon exploit a sick and dying person as it would drop bombs in the global south, as it would to enact an embargo that will starve the children of Yemen. We have throughout the history of our species a track record of disregarding the value of human life. But Gianna, I believe your father's life has changed that. While it remains to be seen if we are going to get the political victories that are necessary to change policing in this country, I can tell you one thing is certain. Your father's life woke up the humanity in all that looked and saw how inhumane those police officers were to your father. I'm so sorry it took his life. But I hope that going forward, we can all look at each other and realize that you matter to me, that your life matters to me, your well-being matters to me, your peace and your stability means more to me than my greed. That is the fruit that will come out of the seed that George Floyd's life was, just as Ossie Davis said of Malcolm X while delivering his eulogy.
That what we place in the ground is no more now a man, but a seed, which, after the winter of discontent, will come forth
again to meet us. That's the fruit. And while I can't speak for everyone else, I can speak for me. It is our humanity. It is our greater humanity. It is the value of every single life. It is the value of every single sentient mind on this planet. It is irreplaceable. It is something that once it is gone, it will never be here again. And that, by definition, makes every human life far more valuable than any earthly commodity. Our lives are more valuable than profit. Our lives are more valuable than the pettiness of our politics. Our lives are more valuable than the ambitions of men. Your life is quite literally the most precious thing on the face of this planet. And even though it may not seem this way, because you have been born into a system that dehumanizes you, that commodifies you, and treats us like we're disposable. The seed that will bear fruit from George Floyd's death after the winter of our discontent will be that every single one of us will understand just how precious our lives are. And that, Gianna, that's how your father has already changed the world. And that's how you're going to change the world. And that's how all of our children, they're going to change the world. Because we're not only raising them up to be revolutionaries who will stare this system in the face and dare it to treat us anything less than the magnificence of our humanity demands. We are raising up a generation that understands exactly how much our lives matter.
Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned, man. We got more coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Little baddie, cashing big checks. I bought the whole block out, now that's a big
no,
flex.
sir, it is
Peeping out my
in the
Uber
flesh,
window like
blue
what's
shirt
next.
and all. Good morning,
Got new levels and new devils out the wazoo. Ain't no worries, life gets better when you find you. And if you mind you, peace will abide and hide you
Shout out to
until
George
it's time to
Floyd,
start anew.
Pastor Anthony
So
Galloway, man.
grown, ain't got no curfew. Who brought the bad vibes? Tell that bitch move. Walking all in my inner, that's a bitch move. Press that I arrive.
Laura Strada, good morning. KFZ, Jeremiah, Lily. Promises manifested. Showston, what's going on?
I was always this fly.
Tiger, what's going on, Tiger? Bunny Rabbit, I'm so high. Okay, buddy. Juanita, good morning. Jonathan, Esther, on and it goes.
All that jealousy, you should subside. I think it's time to turn that mirror on to you. Put it up
good
close
morning.
for a clear view.
Shay, good morning to you.
Deep down inside.
Sophia Williams, good morning.
And soon you will find a pretty soul that needs more shine. My world has come to
Waterstones, good morning. Kareem Ransom, good morning. Courtney the SLP, good morning to you.
There is no good or better. I think tonight
You still sounding loud today?
1, 2, mean right hook.
Okay, Marsha Reese, good morning. Miss Nuru, Silk City Socialist.
Never let up, no
Bill
need to
Fox,
speed, but keep your foot up on
Christopher
the gas
Shaw,
pedal.
good morning.
About having a golden award. When God made
Vincent,
me to
Melanie
be a
Dennis,
ice cold
Esther
meadow.
Brochin.
Why are you
Shelby Hall, Nat. Hey, what's going on, sister?
About me saying,
Afraid not to move. Testicles. Good morning.
I'm untouchable girl.
Good morning, everybody. Make sure you get your coffee, your tea, your drinks, whatever it is you need to get your morning started, y'all. Y'all stay tuned. We got one coming up next on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Say a prayer tonight to keep it so tight.
And also that means Benjamin Dixon can't come through. Y'all get 30 minutes of yours.
I put the work in. Now I got them big bags that you call Perkins.
Yeah.
My world has come together. And maybe
Iris, good morning. Chris, good morning.
There is no good or better. I think tonight I'm gonna make it mine. My world has come together.
I'm here in South Minneapolis, nearly 5 months after the death of George Floyd. As you can see, piles of rubble remain. This used to be a liquor store. And if you take a look over here, there's an abandoned convertible that was actually set on fire. This is a typical scene that you see still in these neighborhoods where a lot of civil unrest occurred. Now, the community obviously still waiting to be rebuilt, still waiting for justice. That trial set to take place in March 2021, but about a dozen pretrial hearings have already taken place, including one this week where critical decisions were made. The judge decided all 4 officers will only have one trial. Exactly how will that impact the outcome of the case? Eli Darius breaks it down.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
The 4 officers who murdered George Floyd are going to be tried jointly.
Eli Darius, organizer with American Civil Liberties Union, says he believes this decision is a step in the right direction.
I believe that the judge made the right decision. It allowed for less game playing with what's admitted into evidence. It allows for a much more organized and coherent prosecution in which they're really able to zero in.
While some say officers like Thomas Lane, who was a rookie cop only on his 4th day, shouldn't get the same punishment as the other officers, Eli Darius sees it differently.
They all cooperated together to murder him. They all participated in successive order to take his life. One held his feet, one held his torso, One held his knee to George Floyd's neck, and then one held the crowd back, who were all screaming, "He's dying. He's no longer breathing. He's not moving. Can you guys check on him?" While this officer made sure that none of them was able to intervene and save George Floyd's life, so that they were all complicit. And the jurors have a right to see the totality of the evidence, to see it all as one big picture, as opposed to diffracted individual segments that would allow for defense attorneys to play all kind of games with the evidence. There is a high level of urgency for justice to be rendered in this case. My expectation is that in this moment, in these times, these circumstances will allow for this system that has been very unjust towards us to finally render what many of us know is the expected outcome, and that's guilty verdicts in all 4 cases.
Now, one other critical decision that was made this week during those pretrial hearings, the judge decided that audio-visual recordings will be allowed during this trial, something that you typically don't see happening across the state of Minnesota. In South Minneapolis, I'm Georgia Ford.
I am George Floyd.
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 I am George Floyd. My life matters.
My life matters.
My life matters. My life matters.
My life matters.
My life matters.
Justice to me is doing what's right.
When somebody commits a crime,
They get locked up.
It's equal accountability for all.
Justice to me is fixing inequality.
And justice to me is equality across the board.
It's ironic that black men are often targeted by white officers.
I'm still facing things that my parents have faced over the years.
I think it's not fair because I think everybody should be equal, and I think that everybody should, go to the same things. Everybody should have the same opportunities.
I've noticed that justice does not have the face of color as much as it used to. I really think that the face of justice is green these days, and the lower class suffers on a regular basis.
Justice to me is seeing those who bring our black community down by abusing their power behind bars.
The person who committed the crime,
They will have to suffer consequences.
Justice to me is when a black man in general, just a black man in general, walks down the street. I feel like he shouldn't be threatened when he sees a cop or a cop car, or he shouldn't feel like his life is in danger when he sees someone wearing that badge, because the person wearing that badge has or feels like they have more power than they actually do, and they abuse that power.
Why are my people still suffering from things that has happened in the past with my ancestors? And here we are, 2020, and still the same things are happening. We're being beaten, we're being lynched, we're being killed. Why?
I think that justice means bringing us all up as one, as Americans.
I am
George Floyd.
I am
George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am
George Floyd.
I am George Floyd.
I am George Floyd. I won't be able to see my daughter grow old, to be at her prom, to be at her wedding. Justice to me is police reform throughout the whole 50 states, where officers are given random drug tests, random lie detectors, just to see where they're at mentally. This can't happen in 2020. Police brutality must come to an end.
I just really want to thank all of you for taking the time out to participate in this conversation. I feel like it's really, really needed. So thank you for your time and your willingness to contribute your voice and your knowledge, your expertise. What are your thoughts on the coverage surrounding the murder of George Floyd? Do you feel like the coverage was done well, or were there things that you felt like were done very poorly?
I'll say this. I think the coverage is better than the coverage was with Jamar Clark and with Philando Castile, which were two of the previous police killings here in the Twin Cities. With that being said, there's still a lot that was missed by some of the major media outlets, and some that even some of the local outlets we're having a hard time grasping. At the end of the day, I was so busy being a Black man living in North Minneapolis, dealing with the fact that we had white supremacists at our doorstep, that it was hard for me as a journalist to cover the fact that we have white supremacists in our midst who were using this as an opportunity to capitalize on the grief and pain that we as Black people were experiencing due to the death of George Floyd. So that's one of the areas where, in terms of a long-term report, that's something that I'm planning on revisiting, because it's the part of the story that's not being told, that's been glossed over, and has in some ways just been left out.
I think I'm going to be a little cynical. And George, I want to thank you for putting this together. And I really, really wish I could be there with my fellow Minnesotans. But being so far away, I think my honing in on the coverage really showed a difference between national coverage and local coverage. And I think in part it is because of a decade of newsrooms cutting back and retiring many African-American reporters and broadcasters, many who had come up through these newsrooms and started to make good livings. And as the recession came around 2010, they started targeting those people and offering them early retirement. And you saw the decimation of the newsroom in terms of being able to cover stories in communities of color by people of color, and slowly started to become more and more white. It also became less and less of newsrooms with depth, because as the older ones were weaned out, they started hiring more and more people who could do the job, but they were not being trained in the job. They had no background in the community. So you see more and more people going out to cover these instances where they did not have any depth. There was no follow. The shame of the 24-hour news clock is that there is no follow-up. There is no background. And now you don't have any newsrooms with depth. I watched the national news, which was outstanding. I think watching reporters of color get in there and really letting people see through the power of video what we have known for our entire lives.
And I think that the other thing that national news did so well was that they jumped right to the why of it, where local news was stuck on the what from a lot of the covers that I saw. I'm in LA, so it was mostly just what are they doing? Oh, they're looting and they're rioting, and they weren't talking to the community about why. And okay, the unemployment rate is twice as high for Blacks than it is for whites, whether we were in COVID or not. And more Blacks are dying from COVID-19 than whites. And like going into all of this frustration, the national news did a great job, I think, of going into the why early and not focusing on just what they were doing.
And I have to take my hat off to Unicorn Riot and the alternative media for really doing a hell of a job of really showing people what's going on. If it wasn't for 9 seconds of video, none of this would be shaking the world today. That's the power of video.
Ditto to everything everyone has mentioned, and I would add, I do still think media has a problem with sort of acknowledging our expertise and our lived experience as sort of a primary expert in areas. We're still being viewed as biased because of our lived experience versus being viewed as experts because of our lived experience. And I think that's still a challenge.
I heard of one reporter, and I can't remember exactly the city that she was in, but was told she would not be able to cover any of the Floyd protests. We're always being silenced in newsrooms. That's nothing new. That's several decades old. Being told that we can't be objective on stories. And you have to work really hard to get around that and get what you need on the air or in print, because there will always be somebody who will doubt what you're saying, doubt that you could be objective, doubt that you can actually, in many cases, turn a story that is well done. So we have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, but with this one, as a journalist, absolutely, we are supposed to be objective. With this particular story, what's the other side? I mean, we literally watched a man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds being killed. So there isn't another side to this one. And so I was on a forum yesterday, and they were asking what made this one different. And my answer was, first, when you talk about Jamar Clark, there were eyewitnesses and there was video that we weren't shown until months after, when Mike Freeman decided that he was going to acquit Dustin Ringenberger and Mark Swartzy, who killed Jamar Clark. So there was this reasonable doubt. When Philando was killed, you saw immediately after he was shot, and you saw him dying on camera, but you didn't see what led up to it, and there was still this reasonable doubt. What was different with this one was we saw the killing take place. 8 minutes, 46 seconds. There is no doubt. There is no reasonable doubt at all in this one. And you take into effect that we have COVID-19. And before, when these other heinous acts were taking place, we had a distraction. Well, that distraction was removed because we didn't have a basketball game to turn to. We didn't have a football game. We couldn't go to the club. So we had to actually just continue to engage in this one act. And once we finally sat down and engaged, we said, we can't stand for this as a people. And by as a people, I'm saying humans.
I want to switch gears a little bit. And so I'm wondering if you all can share, if you have personally felt in your professional experience in media that your experience as a professional of color in media has been different than your white counterparts. And if so, how?
With Tom Lydon, where I would tell him the story I was going to go into the staff meeting and pitch, and have him repeat the same story and see what happened. And I would pitch the story, and I would either get, we've done that, or we don't have time for that. And then we move around the table, and Tom will go, I have an idea. Tom, that's a great idea. And we go out and drink later and go, can you believe that? Blank. But it happened all the time, whether it was my time management, my professional appearance, what I did outside of work, what stories I covered, it was always held to a different standard. The difference for many other people that get frustrated with that and leave, quit, go to another station, was that I carried the majority of the ratings at that station. So they could mess with me, but to a point. Because if I left, I took all my numbers with me and the majority of the community. And that really meant because I knew that there were disparities, I knew from the start, the first thing that I was taught when I got into the business by people that were really wise was that if you have the community, then you have support, they won't mess with you. And I made it my agenda to go out and be in the community. And back at one point when the station actually had FCC regulations, they would come to me to fulfill the station's FCC requirements because they knew I did at least 5 to 7 engagements a month. and they didn't feel any need to do it themselves, our black anchor will do it. But they still felt compelled to mess with me on a regular basis on ridiculous things.
For me, it was kind of on three different levels. For one, I was a producer in a few different newsrooms, and I went through the same thing as you, Ms. Robinson, about how I wanted to pitch certain stories, and if somebody else pitched it, it somehow was a better idea. But also, I was a manager, assistant news director and news director at news stations, and I had to battle it out with my fellow managers on even, we had a case in where was I, Oklahoma then, where there was a white cop killed a black man, and they did not want to say colors in the report at all. And so here I am as a manager having to tell them why we need to, and this is actually around, I want to say it was around the time of the Philando incident. So this is going on in America, and why do I have to fight to put this in the newscast to say a color? It was a white officer that killed an unarmed black man, and that's what it was. And we had to fight to just put race into it. So fighting with my fellow managers, I've had to do that. And then here in California, I work for the military government public affairs, and I have to fight to get information out because now it's more of a PR side of things that I'm on. And my coworkers, we have a pretty diverse actual office, but my coworkers who are our counterparts and white, they don't understand the looting and things like that. So I'm explaining that, but also our leaders, it's all about looking good. So me writing up things for them to say about how the military is diverse, but also having to put in there, well, still only 8% of officers in the military are black. Only, actually, it's a little less than 8. My husband's one of them, and so everywhere we go is we're the only ones here. So it's trying to explain this needs to be in your statement as well. You can't say everything is fine and dandy in the military. So because we know there's issues, look at the numbers. So I've experienced it on maybe 3 different levels, but it's definitely a different situation for me versus my counterparts.
I think the other aspect of this that's been interesting to see is the ability for a media person to go into a field situation and come out with some real quality understanding of the story, right? We see the value of somebody who is, like Robin mentioned, who is connected to community. You can go to those communities, you can have an actual conversation and come up with a real story behind what is happening, versus if you have to go in there as a media person and you need protection from the community and you need all of these other added elements, you're never going to get very close to the actual story. So those are relationships that are developed well before something actually, jumps off like this.
DA, I think the only reason that I wound up getting the stories that I got at Channel 9 is because one day, a reporter said he wasn't going on into Near North. He refused. And from that day forward, I made it my mission to go into neighborhoods and talk to people when they really didn't want to talk to the media. I mean, I started just months before Tycel Nelson was shot and killed by Minneapolis police officers. So I was there to see it all and watch them put media people out of group meetings at North High School. And I said to myself, if my station's not going to want to cover this, I have to cover this, and I have to be in the community. We were the only station that were allowed into gang summits. We were the only station that were allowed to follow in the LBGT community because when there was a gay serial killer happening in Minneapolis, because people like me and other people around the country feel the need to go in there and actually be a part of it. There's a very cosmetic part of media that people are just using it to get to the next step. But there are really genuine people who want to be involved, but there is a barrier between the community and the reporters on actually knowing how to talk to each other. And then there's a barrier between the community and management on how to force those stories to be on the air.
For me, it was a little bit different because I came from 10 years being in the Black press. So before I was at North News, I was with Insight News. And so obviously these are the stories that I was telling, and my newsroom experience is much different. But early on in my reporting career in St. Louis, when I was covering Jennings, it was so bad. And at the time I drove a beat up 1988 Toyota Celica. When I would go into Jennings, I would call the police department beforehand, say, this is who I am. This is my car. I'm coming to cover a school board meeting. Please don't pull me over. So those were my experiences. And then even with Philando, I had an experience where a police officer was threatening to arrest me because I pulled up on a scene where they were attempting to either arrest and or harass, I don't know, some Black men. And I had my camera out filming it. And I'm showing them I have my press lanyards on my dashboard and everything. And they're still threatening to arrest me. So when the brother from CNN got arrested, I was like, yeah, that happens.
Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like the tone and temperament from when I would be on the street covering things, dealing with the MPD, Bob Kroll, all the myriad of police officers and police captains, there was a different attitude. It's become militaristic. It's become hostile. They have more protection from their unions than ever before. Most of the city money goes to dealing with MPD, and a lot of it is to solve a lot of the brutality cases that they've gone through. It was frightening to me, actually, to see so many of the same familiar faces with the MPD that are still there and still in control. I think I saw Mike Sorrow at a Trump rally with the police union. It frightened me, but it didn't surprise me. It just says, you know, that there's a real problem with the change in attitude on how the police have, what they've materialized into. And it is completely militaristic and weaponized against its own people. And that's the difference between when I was on the street and then Harry being on the street. And that frightens me for you and UPA more than it does anything else I can possibly think of.
To be very honest, it's just very daunting. When you talk about seeing George Floyd, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, and Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor, and you keep naming names and names and names and names, Tamir Rice, and you go on and on. I keep the name I keep coming up with, Harry Colbert. Each time I recognize how that could have been me. And so that's what I'm trying to reconcile and deal with and still be the objective journalist telling this story. But it also fuels me and motivates me to let me know that that's exactly why I'm here, because I'm supposed to be here telling this story.
In terms of Minneapolis media, Twin Cities media, you know, it was a little challenging for me to come back to Minnesota after, you know, working as a journalist in Columbus, Georgia, where there's a lot more diversity. At least there was at the station I worked at. And so to come home and know that the actual population here in the Twin Cities is very, very diverse. We have one of the largest Somali populations. We have a large, you know, Hispanic population, a large Hmong population, but none of that is really reflected in our media. And I think that it definitely does kind of tilt stories a little bit. And so that's my own personal opinion and experience. And so I'm curious to know from you all who have worked in this market, what your thoughts are on the diversity or lack thereof here in the Twin Cities media and how that impacts coverage.
It impacts it in a major way. I mean, you have people that refuse to go into neighborhoods and do stories. You have news organizations that worry really a lot more about their equipment than they do about their people. And so you're not getting fair and balanced coverage. Every news organization has its own slant. So, I mean, you have to take that into a grain of salt. But you're doing a disservice to the community because you have all those things that I mentioned before that play in a newsroom. and no one really taking the time to teach people. One of the one things that I insisted upon was when news reporters came into the newsroom, that they were given a map of the Twin Cities with all the community names on them. Because it is decidedly racist to just name some neighborhood North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis. If people know the neighborhoods, then they have a good idea what's happening, where, and what is their level of involvement or non-involvement. But it paints a racist brush that goes far beyond what's happening just on the screen. It affects real estate. People get zoned. They refuse to move into neighborhoods, and then the economic blight drops. There is so much that needs to be done, aside from blowing it up and starting all over again. The media now is in a really critical stage, not just in the local newsroom, but media all across the world. For the first time, the United States is listed on one of the worst places for journalists to work. And I think in part it happened because of the George Floyd protest. When you see people getting shot in the eye or their leg is bruised up from thigh all the way down to their ankle. It's a dangerous atmosphere out there, not from the people who are on the street necessarily, although you have to worry about that, but you have to worry about law enforcement as well now. And it makes it a really dangerous thing when the president enacts decades-old tropes against the media that were used not only in the 19th century, but also by the Nazis. When they start saying that the media is lying and fake news, that goes back to World War II and the Nazis and Lügenpresse, what they call lying media. And when you whip people up on that frenzy, it makes it incredibly dangerous to do your job out there. And so I do worry about journalists today, and I worry about Harry and BA and everybody who is out there on the street. Because it's a new atmosphere out there. It's changed out there. And we have to really do something to protect our journalists.
Our reporter was out there, David, and he actually got hit with a tear. This was day 2 of the uprising, and he got hit in the leg with a tear gas canister. He said his leg still hurts, but that wasn't the worst part. It was the actual deployment of the tear gas, and he suffers from asthma as well, so you can only imagine.
Black reporters are at a greater risk than their white counterparts because of the health and the mental health and the physical health of what's happening right now across the nation. And we need to protect them now more than ever and support them more than ever. Even though I was here in California, I was getting calls and talking to people where I was sending messages to Reg Chapman, sending messages to Maury Glover, talking to photographers, making sure that they knew what was happening, even if I wasn't there. We have to make sure that we protect them, inform them, and make sure that they have a voice in the community. That's what's missing.
The mental health is huge. Harry, you spoke about it as well. It's just, I've actually been on with the Society of Professional Journalists and the San Diego Association of Black Journalists on different Zoom calls and helping them organize different ways to bring journalists together to take that mental break, to find out how can I cope through this, because we were already going through some things with the pandemic, of course, and having to do our jobs in an entirely different way and have all this new equipment at our home, possibly to do different newscasts and things like that and interviews. So you were already going through that, and now you're going through this, and you were already Black. So you were already going through some other things even before these 2 pandemics, I'll call them. So there's different things that we have been just suggesting to the newsroom managers of even during a crisis and when you're not together, you're doing Zoom or webinars, how can you take breaks and connect still and communicate well with your team to make sure you have those mental health breaks, because they're needed? And how can you recognize it? And how can you make sure that, how do you go to your boss in the news and say, I know I'm on this big story, but I need a day or two. It's tough, but we need to do it. And so, that's the first thing I say is just make sure you're please adhering to your health, your mental health, your physical health, because it comes first. And then just one more point was just with Perry talked about, just uniting with your colleagues who are there with you, because when Omar got arrested, he works for CNN, but you had MSNBC, you had all these other NPR, all these other organizations who made statements, who voiced their concerns about his arrest. You know, there were people who spoke out to the police who didn't work for CNN. So it comes as you need that united voice. So make sure that we're sticking together as journalists and then taking care of our health.
From the local standpoint, you know, I think Black journalists especially have to navigate a kind of a nuanced position here, because we're in a generally liberal market, and that's acknowledged. Yet, so it's harder to talk about some of the nuanced reasons why, you know, Minneapolis and the Twin Cities and Minnesota at large could be one of the more racist places, or one of the more, you know, sort of institutional white supremacist places, because they have a self-interest in promoting this image of being inclusive and this image of being diverse. And, you know, they're there to celebrate Prince. And, you know, there's a lot of elements to it that would make, if you didn't know this place, would make this look like this utopia. Whereas if you talk to Black folks and their lived experience, they know the difference. They know why we have all of these gaps, you know, like gaps that have been persistent through 30, 40, 50 years, and everywhere from economics and housing to education. And no form of liberalism, no form of like nonprofit organizations, no form of that whole structure has been able to cut into that. And there's a reason for it. And it's because, again, you know, there's a way for this to be this place to be, have the image of being a utopia, yet still perpetrating this systemic issue. So as Black journalists, as Black storytellers, you know, I think we support each other and really elevate each other and amplify each other when we're trying to tell those really subtle stories, because the media at large, they don't get those subtle stories. They don't get that subtle understanding. So, you know, we definitely have to make sure we're supportive of one another and amplifying those local, sometimes more marginal voices and bringing those to the forefront.
Well, to go ahead and wrap things up, I want to leave off on a positive note. And so I'm wondering if you all can offer a little insight on what changes that you all think need to happen in order to improve mainstream media coverage on stories of Black and brown people.
Put more Black and brown people in power positions, period. That's the bottom line. We need more Black and brown people who are decision makers. As Robin said earlier, a lot of glamour goes with being the face, but sometimes you're just at the face. You don't have the power to do what you really want to do.
I agree, Harry. I think also it is imperative that newsroom management know that they have all eyes on them now. And so they have to make sure that if you don't have people of color in every aspect of your production, if it's not an assistant news director, a producer, executive producer, chief of photographer, senior anchor, senior reporter, if you don't have a full contingency, you must insist that the people who work at your station know the community, are out in the community, that they are asked on a regular basis, what have they contributed to the community in staff meetings and in individual meetings? Because this is the only way that things are going to change. You can't have one newsroom that has half of the people in the community and the other half are afraid to even go talk to people in the community. If they are not willing to take those steps to do fair and unbiased news, then they need to seek another type of employment.
And it's about also in management, making sure no matter who you have in management, yes, prefer it be a Black person, someone of color, but also making sure they're holding their reporters, their producers, and their staff accountable, you know, making sure that their stories aren't just scratching the surface, that you're digging deep. And you know what, if this is going to miss time slot, if this needs more time, I know that's like unheard of in news, but we got to do it because this needs more. This is not acceptable for air. So I think, as you mentioned as well, just holding them accountable, having those people in position that can make change, and making sure if you don't have those people in position, that at least they recognize what's going on. I mean, when I was working in Columbus, Georgia, I don't know if you were there at that time, but when Michael Brown was killed, you know, it happens overnight. This is big news overnight. I go into the morning, I turn on the morning news at 5 a.m. after hardly sleeping at all, after watching that. And I noticed, even though we had a Black anchor, we had a Black producer, they did not lead or have anything about Michael Brown's death in that first block. And it drove me crazy. And I didn't understand it. And so here you can have Black people in that position and still not understand. They still not understand the importance of something. So just making sure that people are aware and held accountable in their positions.
I'd also like to see more activism among Twin Cities Black journalists. And I'm not being critical. It's a wonderful organization. But it was something that I always believed, that the organization needs to really be able to meet quarterly with news directors and the head of newspaper organizations, to ask them what they have been doing, to really pay attention to the stories that are being written and be able to call them on the subtleties. And so they know that somebody is watching them and that they have to do better as well.
Yeah, I would say lastly, just, you know, push these editorial boards, push some of these decision makers around, you know, how stories are curated, and make sure that we're well represented in those. Like the Star Tribune's editorial board right now, you know, there's no representation for any people of color. I think maybe perhaps one, but you know, that's a great absence. And then the other thing I would say is, you know, just I think it's ironic that a lot of people are being introduced to Ida B. Wells as a journalist and an activist and an abolitionist, and she held all of those intersections at once and was high quality and you know was a beacon of light in the community, but also was telling a critical story that couldn't come from any place else. And so, you know, the journalism at large likes to kind of like to marginalize a voice like Ida B. Wells in the past and just consider her strictly an activist when she was one of the foremost journalists of her time. You know, so we could look at this time and say the same thing about those voices that are out there that are very strong and very opinionated, yet they are giving you facts. They are giving you the untarnished sort of part of unbiased, you know, which is just some really raw truths. I've been interested in seeing how the media at large, their coverage has changed around policing when they're the ones being hit with rubber bullets, right? Because that's a real life experience that you cannot recover from. You can't come back from that and say, all right, I have to figure out an unbiased way to tell this story. You have to tell the story exactly how it existed, which, you know, you got pushed by a violent force for doing your job. And then also watching them sort of put the First Amendment back together, because the First Amendment is not bifurcated, right? It's the right of the media and the right to tell stories, and it's also the right to protest. They're together in the First Amendment for a reason. And there is no shame in us representing as the right to protest and the right to redress, and also the right to tell a story and the freedom of the press. Those are connected for a reason.
Amen.
And it's sad to say, but it's a truth. And going back to what DA was saying earlier, once you have these other journalists, a lot of white journalists, who are now experiencing what we've been telling them for years, well, now the narrative starts to shift a little bit. Well, maybe there's a nugget of truth. They still won't give us the whole truth, but now they're saying, oh, there's a nugget of truth to what you're saying.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time today. I want to be respectful of time. I know a few of you have to check out. So thank you all for taking the time to participate in this conversation. I'm very thankful that we're able to come together and have this conversation. It brings joy to my heart because I hold each one of you in high esteem. But it saddens me that it's under these circumstances. So please keep the lines of communication open. And if there's any ways that I can support what you all are doing, I'm here for that.
Good morning.
Ben, go for it.
Good morning and welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. I am calling in live. What you are watching now is, sadly, the collision of two major incidents. Today is the anniversary, and we are going to be continuing to commemorate our brother George Floyd, because we will not allow his memory or the movement, the momentum that we got from that moment to die out. I'm calling in live, and what you're watching are clips from Georgia Ford and conversations that I have had, and soon we'll be listening to Rebecca Azor and some DJ exclusive. But we want to keep our eye on that ball, as well as the eye on what's going on in Texas. 19 children, 2 teachers have been brutally gunned down in another senseless act of violence that did not have to happen, but we live in a country that worships guns more than they value the sanctity of life. And you will notice today that all of these Republican politicians who were crying about the sanctity of life last week are putting that on hold so that they can protect the sanctity of their AR-15. Also, I want it to be noted that the company, the manufacturing company that is behind that AR-15 that was used yesterday is Daniel Defense. They are strategically positioned in no man's land off of I-16 between Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia. I see them every time I make that trip, and I'm going to conveniently go see them this week. So you can support our efforts, patreon.com/the BPD show. You can also support our efforts with our partners at ActTV/join. Join ActTV, where they encourage you to do more than watch. They want you to act. And that's all that's left right now. That's all. There's no conversation that we can have. We're not live this morning. I am, but the team isn't, because we collectively discussed this amongst ourselves. There is nothing more that we could add to this conversation that we have not said over the last 7 years of me doing this, and however many years my partners have been doing this. We have covered mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. We've covered police killings of black lives over and over and over again, every day, every week. And so it is not to be funny, it's not to be coy, but we are simply going to replay every mass shooting that we have had to cover, from Stoneman Douglas. I mean, how many mass shootings do we have to discuss? We just lost 10 people last week. We just lost 10 black people to violent white supremacist murder, and that's out of the news cycle. It was out of the news cycle before this mass shooting, but it's certainly out of the news cycle now that we have this tragedy where babies, children were killed. I want us to keep our eye on the ball. The ball is here. Remove every person from power that is not on our side to get gun control, to protect the rights of women, to protect the right to vote. I don't care if they have a big D by their name. I don't care how long they've been Democrats. I don't care if they're your auntie. I don't care if it's Jim Clyburn. I don't care if they're the blackest, most melanated acting person on the face of the planet. If they are not on our side to remove the scourge of gun violence, whether it be from police, whether it be from virgin incels who are wanting to be the next Kyle Rittenhouse, or whether it's in the form of black people killing black people and police not investigating because they don't give a damn about us down here in Duval County, Florida. I don't care where the source of the gun violence comes from. If we don't have leaders who are going to put an end to it, then we need to put it into their leadership. We need to remove them from power. And anybody who's telling you not to vote right now, they are an enemy, because there's nothing left that we can do. We need to wholesale clean house. I don't care what party they are affiliated with. If they're not defending black lives, vote them out. If they're not ending gun violence and getting rid of the NRA, vote them out. If they're not protecting a woman's right to choose, vote them out. And not only stop there, organize and remove these lobbyists. We need laws to get lobbyists under control because these sick, depraved, insidious, greedy bastards will stop at nothing to get their money. There are millions of dollars that they make every year in order to protect the NRA. That's brought to you in part by lobbyists. The millions of dollars that these people make every year to make sure police unions and police officers are never held accountable. These are lobbyists who make millions of dollars. So we don't stop with voting. We're going to clear house of these lobbyists and chase every one of those money changers out of our temples. And we're not stopping there. We're going on the local level, and we're going to make sure that these communities are safe from police violence and from police negligence. Police officers who look at the violence in our communities, they know where the guns are. They know where the drugs are. They know where the problem is. They know the source of it. And you know what? They work with them. They sit back and they watch black people kill each other in our communities. And then they wait. In Duval County, no hyperbole. We'll share videos from it once we get the package completed. In Duval County, there's a list of pastors who have now come to no other conclusion than the sheriffs of Duval County are allowing black people to kill each other and not investigating until they're all dead. And then they close the case. Gun violence is an epidemic on every single level, locally, nationally, and internationally, and it is brought to you in part, and no, in full, by the NRA, lobbyists, and the Republican and Democratic politicians who are funded by them. Every one of them need to go on a remove from office list. Vote them out, organize them out, put them out of business, make them homeless, make them hungry as Americans are hungry. Politicians absolutely, without a doubt, should be as safe as our children. I don't want a single politician to ever have to fear like our children have to fear. Or perhaps I should reverse that and say that they should have the same level of fear as a kindergartner has in a classroom. The Supreme Court should not be as comfortably safe in their homes than our children are in the classroom. And if anybody has a problem with that, you know where to find me. You'll find me at Daniel Defense. I'm getting there this week. We're working on it. We're working on arrangements to get there in front of that place because it's time to pull up. I'm going to say less and turn it back over to the team so that you can continue getting the coverage of our commemoration of our brother George Floyd. But keep in mind, we're not negligent in what happened in Texas. Matter of fact, we're going balls to the walls. And we're going to do everything we can. Because if we can't send our kids to school and bring them home safely, then what is this country good for? Absolutely nothing. Turning it back over into the hands of the team. Good morning to everyone. Thank you. Keep your heads up. Keep your heads up because the fight is not over. We're going to win. And I'll talk to you soon.
So the next segment's going to be a short.
We are here at VCon with Spike Lee. It is an honor to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you. You were amazing. Everything that you said was phenomenal. The hard work, the fact that,
you put the work in.
Exactly.
You can't shuck and jive. That famous song, ain't no half stepping. Can't half step. You can't fake the funk. Because you get sooner or later you're gonna get exposed.
And be on a constant search for knowledge, to learn, because that will impact your craft and make you the best version of artist you can be.
And when you look at this space, NFTs, this is becoming a alternative economy. It's a huge opportunity for people who look like us. However,
we gotta get in. We gotta get in where we can fit in.
That's right. That's right. I think one of the key things we're hearing from folks is that the lack of education, people are concerned. They don't fully understand it. They don't know who to trust in terms of learning how to get on board. Do you have any advice of how you learned about it, the steps you took to make sure you weren't getting scammed?
I had the luxury of having two very educated children, grown adults now, who for years have helped their daddy, who grew up with 45s, needles on a turntable, till this day, they have to turn the TV on for me. Yeah. That shows you how antiquated I am. But They love their daddy, and they're helping their daddy, so they're keeping their daddy to what's happening. So thank you, my son Jackson. Thank you, my daughter Satchel. Named after Satchel Paige.
Beautiful. I love it. Gary Vee yesterday talked about how NFTs and the blockchain can really revolutionize the filmmaking industry. For people who are in the filmmaking industry, can you talk about the opportunities that this opens up for them in terms of funding and retaining ownership of their work?
Yes. Here's the thing. First of all, if you do NFT, please make you own it, so nobody comes sue you. Own your IP. Also, several films have already been financed through NFTs. They have not made the films yet, but they've gotten the money to finance it. They've raised the money through NFTs. So technology, used the right way, can be a useful tool. And these opportunities come up, and you're not with it, and you're not hip, you can get lost in the sauce. Lost, Again, I'm blessed, my children, helping their daddy. But if you have a phone, that's a world of information in your hands. And again, you have to do the work. Educate yourselves about whatever you want to do. I mean, to jump into NFTs, not knowing anything, I would not prescribe that. You got to do the research. You got to do the work. You got to find out who the people to talk to, who know what they're talking about.
In 10 years from now, do you think that the Universals and the Warners are going to be less relevant because of these alternative models for people to self-fund their artwork?
I think there's always going to be studios. And I think there's always going to be streamers now. History has told us there's an evolution. There's an evolution. Evolution.
What's the key to timeless art you've made? I feel like every film you've made. I remember actually going to Chicago one time to see a film that was exclusively premiering in the Chi. And so
I would just say that I think there are a lot of people in Chicago don't think Chirac is timeless. But, I never went to this thinking that everyone's going to love the stuff I do. That's just, that's just the way it is.
Anything else you want to say? Anything you're feeling being here in Prince's hometown?
I'm looking forward to going over to Paisley Park. I never did the tour. I have not been there since our brother left us in his physical. He's still here. His spirit is here. Let's not get it twisted. Our brother Prince's spirit is still here. And I know I'm going to feel him soon when I go over to Paisley Park.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
I miss my brother.
I appreciate it.
And as you can see, my hand painted.
Yes. They're doing a mural right now.
Yeah, and also I got this from him too. This was his.
I was just at Paisley like a week ago. Yes. You're the only person I let snatch my mic, but you spike, so you can do that. You can get away.
For more coverage of Spike Lee at VCon, become a subscriber at GeorgiaFord.com.
Yeah, baby, it's too much to lose. Right now it's hard to see, girl, just close your eyes and tell me that you will stay tonight. Come on, baby, stay tonight. Don't go from my show.
Another throwback jam for y'all. Then we gonna get the show started here.
Tonight, let me change your mind.
I walked through the fire and it couldn't even hurt me. There's a lot of demons out here trying to deter me. Personally, time wasters are unworthy. So I tell them cut it out like surgery. Kings don't deal with peasants. I will, but I am legend. Jehovah dropping but my foot on the pedal. I will have a statue erected of me stabbing a sword through the neck of the devil. Diamonds around the bezel. Tesla Model S and no, it's not a rental. Fresh like Wendy's lettuce, dripping, so torrential. One flick of the wrist, make it feel elemental. I was always meant for greater things.
Actually, David, this is old. This is season 1. Pre-season 1.
Never get again. It was no accident. It was no mistake. I was born to be great, born to spit flame, born to acquire the fortune and fame. This was no mistake. This was no accident. As a prince, I was passionate. Life was an action flick, and now my castle extravagant. You see this crown?
Hey,
they calling me king now. They calling me king now. But this what I've been about. You see this crown? They calling me king now.
That's right now, Eddie. What you say? They calling me queen now. You better do that, girl.
I think I'm the chosen one. All my dreams are coming real. I'm just like a frozen sun. This fire might give you chills. I think I'm the I know I'm the chosen one. Just like James Bond with the golden gun. All of my concubines know what's up. They think I'm amazing. They think that I saved them. And when I lay it down, they all get elated. And they never late, so there's never no babies. But when I make them, people gon' praise them. I want a little prince and a princess.
Today we have my sister in there. She's ready to go.
They can get their chin checked. They don't want to smoke, not even incense.
All right.
It was no accident. It was no mistake. I was born to be great, born to spit flame.
Peter Griffin, yes, Wheel of Time. Man, oh my gosh, I gotta go to a wedding tomorrow, but yes, Wheel of Time.
As a prince, I was passionate. Life was an action flick, and now my castle extravagant. You see this crown? Yeah, they calling me king now. They calling me king now. But this what I've been about. You see this crown? They calling me king now.
Watch this juxtaposition
king now.
Y'all ready?
Yeah, they call me king. Calling me king now. They calling me king now. This is what I've been about.
If you have not already, you can, like it or not, patreon.com/like it or not, patreon.com/like it or not, or patreon.com/VPD Show, man. Shout out to everybody again for all your tweets, restreams, and everything else, man. We greatly appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We mean it. With that being said, this is just for y'all. Hopefully there won't be an acapella version today, but we'll see how this goes. Y'all know what time it is. Good morning, y'all. And shout out Jeremiah Schaefer, who said he just joined Patreon a few minutes ago. Shout out Jeremiah, we appreciate you.
9 a.m. to 10:30, yeah. Like it or not, is on your channel, yeah. Politics and culture is we change skin like we're supposed to, yeah.
I forgot to send a link to my mom.
We get to choose what gets the views. Like it or not, with Queen Azora, it's starting now, so stick around. Like it or not, it's going down. Like it or not, y'all stick around. Oh, Rebecca,
Mark, yeah, shut the hell up.
It's coming through. You know she got us.
Yeah, it was Tyrese. I think I'm Bubba, and I sang like Bubba with Tyrese mixed in.
That's my dog. This is his show. He's a politics pro. I am your DJ. DJ exclusive. Y'all know who I am. I stay dropping them jams.
Jam Boulder, you know I got you.
Like it or not, it's going down. Like it or not, y'all stick around. Oh, like it or not, it's starting now.
I was about to pour the coffee on it, and then I thought I might know it's hot.
Like it or not, it's about to go down.
Like it or not, with Benjamin Dixon, starts now.
If I unmute the microphone, good morning, people.
Good morning and welcome to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth and not care who doesn't like it. It's given everything that's happening, I still have to say it's a good morning, James, because I was not, honest to goodness, I was not absolutely sure we were going to get justice in the Derek Chauvin trial yesterday, but here we are, guilty on all 4 counts. Was it 3 counts? Whatever many counts. Yeah, 3 counts. He's guilty on all 3 counts. So, man, I just, I'm leery to celebrate because even in the backdrop, there was another police shooting of a 15-year-old girl. We're going to talk about her momentarily. But still, it feels like, I don't know. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm happy that, everything happened like it did. The verdict came down right. They got it right. Now it's just time to do the work, continue doing the work. And, I feel this shows that the justice system can work, but I also feel like this happened just because, people can save face, if you feel what I'm saying. They didn't want to risk America for the wrong verdict.
And that's exactly what was going on. Like, to be honest with you, that's the level that's where we were. That's where we are. Yeah. Like, if they could not have found themselves to find Derek Chauvin with 24 different angles, 24 different angles of us seeing this man murder George Floyd, if this country could not have seen fit to give us that modicum of justice. And as I said yesterday several times, it takes so much to get so little in this country. It takes so much energy and so many fights for us to get just the smallest example of justice. But here we are. Derek Chauvin is guilty on all 3 counts. I want us to take a look at this first clip. This is the reading of the verdict, and particularly it's him getting handcuffed, which was the highlight of yesterday's episode. Let's take a look.
State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror 4-person, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury 4-person, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury 4-person 019. Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody of the Hennepin County Sheriff. Anything further? All right. Thank you.
Here he goes. And this was the part I was looking forward to the most. Them arresting him, putting him in handcuffs rather, and escorting him away. We have 8 days, I believe, until sentencing. But still, between now and then, he has been remanded to the custody of Hennepin County Jail. This is what we needed, man.
Yeah, and it's 8 weeks.
8 weeks, okay.
8 weeks. They go for sentencing. Yeah. So
and here one last thing.
Good to see it, bro.
That was an important scene to see, and that's what we want to see on repeat over and over and over and over again. And police officers need to see that on repeat over and over and over again, because here's the thing: he's only the 7th police officer to have been found convicted of murder since 2005. Now, out of around 15,000 police killings during that same time frame, he is the 7th. I got to repeat that: 7th police officer to be convicted since 2005. And in that same period, 15,000 police killings took place. Now, I want us to take a listen into George Floyd's brother, Philonise Floyd, as he responded to Derek Chauvin being found guilty.
You have been here throughout the trial. You have been in the court, which very few people have been in. What was it like for you today? Because you have seen so much in court, all of the bad things that happened to your brother. What was it like hearing from the jury today?
It was a bit of relief. I actually paced back and forth before I even went into the courtroom. I have faith. I believe in God. So I was optimistic, and I kept saying, we will get justice. We will get it. And just sitting in there, just listening to those words, guilty and guilty and guilty on all counts, that was a moment that I will never be able to relive. I will always have it inside of me. It's just being able to know that it's justice for African American people, just people of color, period, in this world. This is monumental. This is historic. This is a pivotal moment in history. And all I can think about is Emmett Till. I think about Sandra Bland. I think about Miss Carr with Eric Garner. It's so many people. We have new people being killed. Dante Wright. I think about Jacob Blake. I think about Philando Castile. All of these people, they're all dead. You got people that live near me. Pamela Turner, she's dead. And we all need justice. We're all fighting for one reason, and it's justice for all. And I think today has been an occasion where people can celebrate. But tomorrow, it's back to business, because we have to stay steps ahead of everything, and we'll keep pushing, and we'll keep pushing. And like Reverend Al say, we'll keep fighting.
We'll keep fighting. The fight continues today. Rebecca Azor, James, Rebecca, what was your reaction to yesterday? I know we were trying to get on a live, but I know that you were watching still. What was your reaction?
Mm-hmm. I know she was about to say something prolific too. Yeah.
Here we go. I apologize,
there we go,
you guys.
Sister.
So yesterday, I definitely felt a sense of, for 5 minutes, a sense of, okay,
yeah,
we're capable of holding people accountable. We're capable of accountability. Thank you, God. Because we didn't know. We were unsure. And it's crazy. Black people shouldn't have to feel unsure. I'm in the workplace. We all, people who are working, we know we're sitting in the workplace and we're like, listen, I'm going to take this time to be glued to the TV. I'm still going to be logged into the system, but I ain't taking no calls right now. Let me focus on what's happening right now, because I have anxiety, right? But we all were feeling like, dang, it's crazy how we knew that he deserved the guilty, right? But we didn't know if he was going to get it, right? And even though everything was on paper, even though we saw this trial be dragged out, even though we saw this thing, everything was on video, we had to go through all of this and we didn't know if he would end up guilty or not. But I felt a sense of peace for about, that quick, but I needed to remind myself and make sure I don't condition myself to think that this is justice. Right. Because there were other police officers on the scene. I think they all should have been charged in some way, shape, or form. But we're here and holding one accountable, as we've been saying for the past few weeks, that we need to keep this stuff going, because what this does is hold them accountable and get the other officers shook, so that they know that they too are capable of going to jail for life, potentially, for the murders that they do. Because it cannot be, I may get off of this. It's a likely chance that I'm going to get off of this. But I had to make sure that I don't condition myself to think that just because this happened, police officers are going to stop. The numbers don't match. So, but we holding them accountable. Yes, I definitely say that this was a moment that shows us something can be done. We can hold them accountable at least.
Yeah. No, I love that framing. And yesterday, President Biden and Vice President Harris both addressed the nation last night as well, saying in part, quote, "We are all a part of George Floyd's legacy, and our job now is to honor it." Let's take a look at some of what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say.
America has a long history of systemic racism. Black Americans, and Black men in particular, have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human. Black men are fathers and brothers and sons and uncles and grandfathers and friends and neighbors. Their lives must be valued in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our housing system, in our economic system, in our criminal justice system, in our nation. Full stop. Because of smartphones, so many Americans have now seen the racial injustice that Black Americans have known for generations. The racial injustice that we have fought for generations, that my parents protested in the 1960s, that millions of us, Americans of every race, protested last summer. Here's the truth about racial injustice. It is not just a Black America problem or a people of color problem. It is a problem for every American. It is keeping us from fulfilling the promise of liberty and justice for all. And it is holding our nation back from realizing our full potential. We are all a part of George Floyd's legacy, and our job now is to honor it and to honor him. Thank you.
President Biden had something to say, and we'll get to his clip in a second. But what is your response? It was a good statement. It was a good statement. What were your thoughts, Rebecca and James?
Go ahead, James.
You know what we always say. I'm just glad to see that she's speaking. I want her to speak up more on other stuff besides the police killings. I do want them to. I do want her to be out there more, and I'm hoping that she's doing more work behind the scenes. But I'm glad that she made that statement. It shows that she does care. But we just need a little bit more, Kamala, Vice President Harris. That's all.
Yeah, because if she's shooting to be president, wrong word. If she's trying to be president, and definitely we need to see more of her. But actually, James, I think in this moment, I really believe that I want to see her speaking more on the policing. I mean, how people are being killed by police officers, especially because she was one. So I want to see her speaking more on it and to gain the trust of the people, especially as a person.
Rebecca, you ain't no good.
You're right.
I'm trying to hold my composure here, but you slid that in there go ahead. Finish up. I'm sorry.
But especially as a person of color, sis, we haven't seen you in decades. January to now, what are we in? We're in May. We can just say we're in May now. And, George Floyd, this has been a year. We're coming up on a year. It's like, ma'am, sis, girlfriend, where have you been? And this is a perfect time to show people, if you want to right your wrongs, because we're wrong a lot of times in what you did. But in this particular moment, as a person of color and knowing what's going on and knowing you have this position, all you had to use was this. All you had to come out and, and speak, to say something.
So sooner, she should have came. She should have. You felt like she should have came out sooner.
She should have came out sooner, but I think that, excuse me, I think that in this particular time and in this particular moment, Biden made sure that he put her to speak first. Because she is a person of color, and it wouldn't be well received by him first. And Kamala, we haven't seen you. So you're a person of color. This fits it. Go ahead and speak, talk your talk. And, what she's saying is something that a politician has said many times before. The person that died, we remember Obama. Trayvon Martin could have been my son. Trayvon Martin could have been me. So it's one of those things, and not to say that it's not true, but they had to pull from those relatable places and those sensible places. But I'm looking for somebody to say, hey, let's start for reform. Let's start change, because, this ain't it. This is not it. We do not want to see another. I want somebody to really speak on it from the heart and not from that place of, I'm a politician and I got to be relatable.
I think... Wow, you guys are putting me in an awkward position to kind of low key defend Kamala, which is something I absolutely normally won't do. I feel like this is probably the best statement that we could have expected from somebody who actually is in that position. See, the thing is like, they're not there to serve us. Right. Just like the police are not there to serve us. Right. Obama and Trump certainly, but even Biden, they're not technically there to serve us in terms of what they're doing. Should they be serving the people? Yes, because they're there with the consent of the governed. But, they're there to protect the system. Kamala is there to, and this is why they could talk more after the fact than during the trial, because during the trial, they are part of the same exact system that's trying to get the trial accomplished and to whatever end. So I guess I would never have expected any politician to come out and say something remotely meaningful about George Floyd during the trial, because they are part of that same exact system. So I don't think that your statement is really defending her, though. I just think that it points out another issue, like the fact that these politicians are a part of this same system as well. So that's another thing. That's another issue in itself. So. Yeah, I mean, you ain't defending. I must say, please don't put me on the spot for. I mean, not that but you're right about one thing. Yeah. You're right about a couple things, but the biggest thing was, Kamala went first, right? Yeah, and I think that was a smart move, because we didn't really want to hear from Joe Biden about this, because if anybody
due process is what Joe Biden would.
That's what he said.
We don't want to hear that, and he knew he was wrong. So Kamala, come on, black girl, come on, woman,
and fix it up.
Come on, sister. Come on, sister. History in the police department. Come on, pull up.
I do hope it means something, though. Remember during the inauguration, you can say a lot about Joe Biden, but during the inauguration, he actually said that white supremacy was the biggest threat to this country. Now, and I'm going to be honest with you now, from the perspective of the office of the presidency and the office of the vice president, I think it means something for Joe Biden to have said white supremacy is the biggest threat to this country, and for that to be recorded in the history of this country, right? And then for Kamala, I heard her say a couple things that I don't think I've ever heard a vice president say. I don't think I've ever heard a vice president say that black men lives matter. You know what I mean?
That's a big deal.
I don't think I've ever heard a single person in the history of this country of that office, of that magnitude, say something about black men, black families, black fathers actually mattering. So, from that perspective, when you consider what America is, it means something to have that office actually say it. Now, what means even more, Rebecca, what you were saying, now y'all got to be about it. Now we need to actually start changing some of that stuff.
And it's crazy, because we've been saying that once you're in office, you got to be about it. And I did expect more.
Coach, I love you, mama. Yeah. Hard worker, curse you but won't hurt you.
Shout out to everybody that's still hanging with us today. Y'all don't like it or not, make sure that y'all hit that like button, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure that you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, Like It or Not Show. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Like It or Not Show, y'all. Let's get it. Let's go.
Homie, I go crazy. Now that I'm older, I'm getting a little closer. Love only gets stronger. We talking a little longer. Was more than
shout out to the mamas. Little throwback song for y'all. Let's go.
If it wasn't for her, then it would not be me. I got nothing but love for all my mommies representing. If it wasn't for her, then it would not be me. I got nothing but love.
What is that? Michael 147. I'm a king. Yeah, I'm a whole ass king out here in these streets. Yeah. We'll go with the king.
Magician with the ring, she made it happen.
Dude, good morning, good morning. Eva, good morning. Purple Rain Arts, good morning, y'all. Right, Rebecca, a king. K-A-N-G. Oh, king. Keeps the frame right. Boom. Right there.
Bully, that's my old lady. Same woman, front row, yelling rap, baby.
Yeah, I see my crown. Got a little ponytail. I got a little bun, too, on my head.
She done raised a good
but it's still cute,
when
though.
shit was getting tougher, she told me to pray harder. And if she hit the number, she would give me every dollar. Thanks, mama. If it wasn't for her, then it would not be me. I got nothing but love for all my mommies representing. If it wasn't for her, then it would not be me. I got nothing but love for all my mommies representing. No matter
all right, y'all.
Baby, she
welcome back to the screen.
Remember all the times when I was out here running wild, doing everything
and anything to make her
smile. I just love it when my mama say I make her proud. No matter what for her, baby, she gon' hold it down.
All right, welcome back to the screen. Ben and Rebecca, y'all.
Anything to make her smile.
I thought I heard Rebecca say, "Wait, I'm like, is Rebecca? No, she's gone. Oh, okay."
Nah, man, we just kind of was vibing to the music a little bit.
Look, I actually went to go get my wings. I'm starving. I thought the music was going to play a little bit longer. I didn't know.
So she probably did yell, wait.
I knew I went crazy.
Alexa, play up.
She didn't hear you.
Beat me too.
Oh, she didn't hear me. Okay, never mind.
Alexa, play Cardi B up.
She's not listening to y'all.
No, she's not on it today.
Good job.
Okay. Right. With that whole ass CIA agent in your
Alexa
bedroom.
got an attitude over there. Alexa, helpful.
The whole fed.
Alexa, there she is.
Oh, gotta be bougie with it. Alexa.
I know, right? Rebecca has so many voices, man. Like Rebecca has like 18 different.
She just said thanks.
accents.
I like you too.
Oh, girl.
Yeah, I do. I have like a million voices. It's just, that's why I always tell people, like, I happen to be from South Florida, so then I sometimes dip in and out of that. And then I'm Haitian, so sometimes some words come out with the Haitian accent or I can't pronounce them. And then because growing up where I lived was suburban, so a lot of white.
You got a little bit of Karen. You speak a little Karenism.
I know that very well because my friends who were white, like my best friend when I was younger, her name was Abby. Her mom was a Karen. Then my next door neighbor, who we used to invite to all my birthday parties, was white, and that was a Karen. So yeah,
Your experience with how to navigate Karenism, son.
It's it runs deep. My blackest experience
very fluent in Karen.
Oh, I'm very fluent. Yes, and here's the thing about that though. All of that is all me though. I'm a medley. Like I'm a melting pot for real. I don't really like be out here trying to be something I'm not. That's why, I think it's a gift.
You're the fruit salad of diversity. That's why. Is that why you don't like the diversity and inclusion so much? Because it's like you are the quintessential diverseness.
No, it's because diversity and inclusion is dumb. It ain't real.
What do you have against diversity and inclusion, man?
Because it's been diversity and inclusion in a big business is just going to be you. And then now you got to go and recruit me. And then I got to go recruit the next black person. And then it's going to be us three, me, you, and Bubba on a big
carrying
company.
The weight of the world.
Yes, on a big company, right. Carrying the weight of the world. And if something goes wrong with the company and a black person, they're going to have to come tap on us. And then what we going to do? We have to be like, damn, we work for this racist ass company and they want us to make them look not racist.
Right.
Now we got to come up with something and people gonna look at us like sellouts. That's diversity. To me, that's how they have built this diversity and inclusion thing. That's why I got a problem with it, because at first when it came out, because we know diversity and inclusion was birthed after the Starbucks thing. So they started forcing the people to take the courses. And what do we say? Oh my God, they're taking courses about how not to be racist. Wow. Are we moving fast or are we moving forward or are we not here? I see forward movement. That's how they were doing that. And I was like, is anybody else seeing that this is dumb? Like, if we've been black for years and racism is bad for years. And now we're thinking,
does anybody see this but me?
Like, a 2-week course or a 3-day course or a 24-hour course. We're shutting down Starbucks, guys. This is innovative. This is fresh. This is going to get the people going.
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It
gets the people going.
Like, no.
Oh, man.
It stops racism.
The people moving.
The person that has been racist for 1,000,000 years. You think one course. The white lady, I don't know her name, and she's the older white lady, and a lot of her stuff goes viral. And she was a professor, Ben, you probably know who I'm talking about. And a lot of her stuff goes viral, an older white woman. And she
I can't think of her name, but I know you're talking about.
Racism and things like that, and how she'll point it out inside of a classroom and things like that. If she can't get through to her own people in a course, and she white, you think your 24-hour shutting down Starbucks is really going to do something?
Jane Elliott.
That's what it is. Yes. And
if Jane Elliott can't explain it to y'all, you know sure as hell we can't.
And she goes in deep, even though she still will never understand it. She knows that, but she understands that I got to let my own folks know that it's not right. Like, you guys are going to sit in this classroom and I'm going to tell you, white racists, that you're racist. And that's it. And they were all uncomfortable about it. So, you can't tell an old man after 24 hours, of a course not to be racist. It doesn't work like that. You really just have to not be racist. You gotta, that's that work that you gotta do on yourself, but that's why I'm just really, so I say all that to say diversity and inclusion, it wasn't birthed from a place of unity, of bringing unity, of bipartisanship. It was not, that thing was just because it made things look good for the business. And that's what we saw when we saw that tweet yesterday from the Raiders. And that's what we saw when we saw the Nancy Pelosi wear that kente cloth and her say that George Floyd's death was sacrificial. That's all the same thing. It's so much the same thing. If we can pull up that photo, Dwayne. I got the photo in total of all of that in one. It's a mess. It's a mess. Oh, okay. But
man,
here it is right here. Here it is. The Raiders tweet. The Raiders tweet is the representation on her hat.
This is a different picture, but yeah, this still does the job. But the one that I was talking about, it was actually her kneeling in the chambers in the Kensington.
Oh yeah.
Superposed on it. Yeah.
Can they hear you?
Yeah, they could hear me.
Okay, yes. So it was that where she's kneeling with the kente cloth, with the Raiders hat on. It's all wrong, okay? That's exactly a representation of what I'm talking about right here. This is what diversity and inclusion looks like when I'm in... No, seriously. If I'm in the room and I'm the only black girl in the room, they're not going to send me out to be the representation of that diversity and inclusion. They're going to make me create something, send out the white person in a kente cloth, kneeling with her fist up, and call that representation.
I can't stand y'all. Hey, Daniel Johnson said, "Hey, I'm about to press go on this GoFundMe for
Don't do that.
I just want to know if it's okay to do so. I don't want to offend anyone. Fred Hampton, we fight racism with solidarity."
Oh man, now, they talk about a GoFundMe for you a house, Rebecca.
GoFundMe, y'all.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, what you could do though is
GoFundMe to get me out of work. Yes.
Get us out of work. Get us out of work.
Oh man!
Now you can become a patron though by going to patreon.com/likeItOrNot.
Like it or not.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/likeItOrNot.
There you go.
And then also we do accept tips. Credit cards.
Yeah, drop them cash apps. What's those cash apps?
What they say, Rebecca?
My cash app.
Although we like the money that changed that jingles, we like the one that folds.
Hello, talk about it. Here's my cash app, people.
DJ X3C.
This will get me closer to better internet. I'm actually dropping it in the chat now, but this will get me closer to better internet and other things as well.
She putting it in the chat room, y'all.
Right now.
I'm right behind her. Look, let me see. Boom. I think I beat Rebecca to it because mine is so short.
You did. I had to remember mine.
Oh,
Becca's
man,
voice,
that's amazing.
$ Becca's voice, right? Yeah, see?
Oh man, y'all are wild. Tip your DJ. Tip
Tip
the
the
co-host.
DJ. Tip the co-host.
Yeah.
Become a patron.
Become a patron. And if you have Amazon, if you're listening to the broadcast or you're watching the broadcast and you
People
have
are
Amazon
so
Prime,
mad. Sorry, Ben.
go to the other place. What happened?
They are so mad. They're like, Rebecca, no, you need to move.
Right. Somebody's talking about Becca, they're going to be sending you nasty messages.
No, yeah. You need to get out of that community. That's a damn shame. For you to be safe, you got to get out of the nice neighborhood.
Yeah, man. Michael also said, love you guys. Keep up the hard work. Bring the truth to your family here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
it.
Yeah.
Well, man, if all hearts and minds are clear.
They're clear.
They're clear. Oh, shit. That was escalated quickly.
I love you, mean it, but it's time to go. I just had an emotional roller coaster. I need a breather. Like, seriously.
Like, for real.
Yeah.
Well,
even though 420 was yesterday, man, I need another 420. Today needs to be 420 part 2. Damn.
I love y'all so much. I don't think I would have been able to get through today, even if I wasn't doing the show, without being here with you guys. So, I love you guys so much. I love you, mean it. Even to the audience members, you guys really helped us out today as well. Bubba with the music, Ben always having my back. I love you. Dwayne, love you, mean it. David, look, ain't nobody getting shut out of this one. I love you, mean it.
Shout out to Max, too.
Shout out to Max. One time for Max, one time for the one time. Eric, one time for the one time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mel, one time for the one time. Jada, one time for the one time.
Jada.
Look, Rebecca,
What up, Jada?
you better call everybody out, or else there's gonna be some memes of you eating that chicken. On camera.
Oh,
Listen,
man.
Dwayne, you see, this is what I'm talking about right here. Dwayne, I was being nice to you, and now you're trying to blackmail me. Listen, the love goes out to everybody. Everybody gets the love.
Yeah.
You delete that chicken picture. You hear me?
Somebody got it already.
Hey,
it's on Twitter
wait a minute.
now.
Before we go, pull up the picture of Rebecca jumping the drawbridge.
Let me tell you guys.
Do we have that picture still, Dwayne? If not, we can go ahead and get out of here. Oh man, because Rebecca looked serious in that Photoshop. It was amazing. It was amazing. That said, I don't have
video. The car just driving
man,
with Rebecca face.
If somebody can do like a there it is, Rebecca getting to that appointment.
Soon come, God. Soon come. And then maybe I won't be. Maybe that's gonna be like a medicinal thing for me. Once it happens, I will be calm and here to do the job.
Oh Lord, my God.
All right, y'all.
I'm coming.
In both ways, is that what you're saying?
Oh Lord Jesus, we gotta.
Oh God.
All right.
I told you, get
All right.
here.
Play the music. This ain't the after party. Play the music. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Love y'all. Bye.
Oh man. All right, y'all, we're gonna keep it short. Y'all know what day it is. It's Wednesday. Please give us free. Make sure that you go support. Go to patreon.com/likeItOrNot. Patreon.com/likeItOrNot. Become a subscriber, y'all. You'll love it. You won't want to miss out on this, y'all. And make sure that you go to our social media pages. Facebook and Instagram, Like It or Not Show. Facebook and Instagram, Like It or Not Show, y'all.
Thought I was nothing without you. You made me beg.
Goku. Shout out to you, Goku. That's exactly what Rebecca was saying. Move, chick. Get out the way. Afraid not. Anytime, we do what we can.
I'm gonna pack my bags up, walk out the door. I won't be back.
Oh, savage sweetheart, I'm gonna try, sister. Gonna sit on the phone look like this all day.
You better leave me alone.
But it's okay.
I'm sick and tired of loving you. I don't
All right, y'all, the time is now 10:30 Eastern time anyway, and I have to go make it do what it do, y'all. So make sure that y'all are in the place in the morning. Gonna bring y'all that goodness, hotness again, y'all. Like it or not, with Benjamin Dixon, Rebecca Azor, and your own James Bubba Williams. I think it's still too much 420 and since from yesterday. Anyway, y'all, I love y'all, mean it. Y'all stay tuned. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Deuces.